Have you ever wondered how they grade meat sheep on how they look and not on how they taste? For example, when they grade a wool sheep, it's the quality of the wool the animal produces, with the size of the animal being secondary. If the wool lacks a certain fineness or quality, then the animal is to be rejected. With wine grapes, it's not the color of the grape or how big they are, it's how they were grown and the flavor that they give to the wine. That's the most important thing. The size of the grape means nothing except for maybe these table grapes. But for a wine grape, it doesn't matter the size, it's the flavor. This Chianina cattle breed from Italy can weigh in at over 3,500 pounds. And I'm sure it makes a lot of really good meat. Yet in the United States, the Black Angus cow, which weighs in around 1,650 pounds, is the most popular because of how it tastes. The Wagyu cow from Japan is some of the most expensive beef you can ever buy, all based upon how it tastes. Yet the Black Angus and the Wagyu are not the largest breeds, but they are some of the most popular. So why is it different with meat sheep? Why do we have to judge a sheep based upon how big it is? Now, I've tried eating other types of meat sheep, and I didn't like their taste as much. The ones I get down at the store, they all have kind of like a mutton flavor to them. And I had a really good friend, give me a sheep from his flock, and honestly, it had a lot of grease on it. Apparently, he'd been feeding a lot of pellets, and it just didn't taste nearly as good as the St. Croix I had. So one day I went out to the St. Croix Hair Sheep International website, and I scrolled down to the bottom of the page. And there's a section at the bottom that talks about all the different attributes of the St. Croix sheep, with the last one saying fine-grained, low-fat meat. When you click on this link, it opens up and it gives you information about how the St. Croix sheep taste. And it tells you that St. Croix sheep do not deposit fat within the muscles, that they produce a much leaner meat without the tallow taste associated with lanolin wool sheep. It says the flavor is mild, which I knew, and that's one of the reasons why I really like it. But then it goes on to tell you that there were taste tests conducted at Utah State University and published in articles in 2004 that placed the meat quality of purebred St. Croix in first place in the grades for flavor, juiciness, and tenderness, which is shear force. The shear force is determined by a machine that cuts through the meat and finds out how tough it is. It goes on to say that this purebred lamb meat was compared to that of other crosses, St. Croix, pure St. Croix, St. Croix to wool, Callipyge St. Croix, Dorper St. Croix, Callipyge wool, and wool crosses. So I went online and I found this research paper that shows that the St. Croix actually does taste better than other breeds. But before we can look at it, we need to understand a few other things. A Callipyge sheep is a genetic mutation first seen in a Dorset sheep that's been bred into a lot of other breeds. And what it does, it makes the hindquarters grow a lot faster and a lot bigger. In this picture, the Callipyge sheeps labeled A and C have a much larger hindquarters than the other sheep labeled B and D. So the mutation does make the sheep hindquarters grow faster, but it comes at a price. The price is that the Callipyge sheep, even though they're larger, they seem to be a little bit tougher. They have a higher shear force. To accurately determine the shear force or the toughness of the meat, they came out with this Warner-Bratzler shear force machine that cuts through the meat and tells you how tough it is. They use a small drill press and a hollow bit to cut out plugs out of the meat, which they can then take and they can test with their machine. The plugs are all the same size, and they use a standard size blade to cut the plugs. Then they measure the force needed to cut through the plug, and that gives them an idea of how tough the meat is, and it supposedly mimics the action of a human jaw, in chewing the meat. So now that we know about Callipyge sheep and shear force and the toughness of the meat, let's get back and look at the study itself. The study covers several things like feed efficiency, growth rates, even the cholesterol level, as well as the taste, and they actually did a taste test. They used Rambouillet, Dorset, and Suffolk sheep for some of the wool breeds. Now I'm going to flip through a lot of these sections, and you can stop it and read it as you want to. It discusses the technique of measuring the meat to make sure that it's equal for all different breeds. And they make certain the evaluators do not know which breed they're testing, so they'll be totally neutral to the outcome. They produced this table on feed efficiency, which showed that the St. Croix and the Dorper were not as efficient in converting feed to weight gain as some of the wool breeds. To me, the St. Croix is more meant for a grass-fed operation than for grain. And so I see that trying to compare these two on a grain-based operation would not be correct. As far as how fast the lambs grew, the Dorper beat just about everybody. It grew faster than the wool sheep or any of the others, and the St. Croix as well. So for a commercial operation that's trying to turn out as much meat as possible, it looks like the Dorper clearly has an advantage in that area. The Dorper was also superior to the St. Croix in the weight of the wholesale cuts as a ratio of body weight. But then again, the Dorper was beat out by the Callipyge sheep, by the wool sheep. So in this area, it lost out to the Callipyge. So the St. Croix did come in last in this area too. More cholesterol was also found in the St. Croix than in the other breeds. And I take this to be, cholesterol can be a good thing. Eggs is cholesterol, and there's good cholesterol and there's bad cholesterol. I'm not sure which kind, this is the HDL or LDL, but that could be why it tastes better, because it has more cholesterol in it. Regardless, the study did show a higher level of cholesterol in the St. Croix sheep breed. But where the St. Croix breed excelled was how it actually tasted. They graded it on shear force, the flavor, the tenderness, a juicy grade, and gave it an overall grade. And when you add all this up, the St. Croix came out ahead of the Dorper or the Callipyge or all the wool breeds. So it showed it did have a much better flavor, and this is the way sheep should be graded. And the fact that they don't turn out sheep that taste good, like St. Croix, they turn out sheep that's not tender, not juicy, or has this mutton or hogget flavor to it, which I really don't like. That's why sheep are not as popular in the United States. That's why most people prefer beef, because they've got some sort of breed that's it grows fast, sure, but it doesn't really taste that good. The study goes on, it talks about how it's going to sell in the marketplace and had a lot of other factors that cause different breeds to be more successful. And it ends up by saying that the highest sensory preference was for the St. Croix. But the thing is, you can't find different types of lamb in the store labeled as to what breed they are, at least not in this country. Maybe in England you can, but not in America. And so St. Croix is never really seen by most people. It's never seen in the grocery store. You have to grow it yourself. It's definitely a niche market. And so St. Croix has never been recognized as being a superior breed of sheep for several reasons. One is parasite resistance, of course, but also the way it tastes. And I'm one of the few people that have tried different types of sheep and choose the St. Croix because of how it tastes. So we really need a yearly competition that's not based on how something looks on the outside, but how it actually tastes, and have a blind taste test with several different judges. And that would let us know who the true champions really are. Because it could be that sheep that aren't quite so beautiful are the ones that actually taste the best. So thanks for listening, and please leave your comments down below. Thanks.